Hey everyone, how you doing? Welcome to a new video. I just received my two new Starboards. A friend of mine brought them all the way from Spain, here in Chile, luckily. So today I'm gonna open them up and I'm gonna show you how I set them up before hitting the water. All right, let's see. So for these upcoming months, I got two different models. The first board is the new model. It's the Hyper that was designed by Antoine Martin, and it's the absolutely down the line wave board model. The new one from Starboard windsurfing, and it comes in a quad setup. As you can see, the shape is pretty radical, narrow, and the fin here in the back, which is what makes it really radical, especially if you go on the back foot. So this is my board for, like, again, down the line conditions here in Chile, especially in Topocalma, and also would be my go-to board for conditions like Hoquipa and probably Pacasmayo too, you know, these kind of places. And then the second model, this one is the Ultra. As you see, since a few years already, all the packaging comes in paper. So we're trying to save as much plastic as possible. It's pretty much useless, so that was a good step up. Here we go. So this is the Ultra, which is the renovated model from the Ultra Code. I got an 82 liters. This is a more side onshore conditions waveboard. It comes in a thruster setup, so a little more agile, you know, and faster, in my opinion. And you can see the shape is pretty different. This board, it's a little wider and a little flatter, and also the back, the tail of the board, it's wider too, which makes it easier in side onshore conditions to maintain the speed and have that traction and that power in the top turn. At the same time, the nose is pretty aggressive, so I can see that in between the 2023 Ultra and the 2022 Ultra Code, the board got a little more radical, and yeah, I'm just pretty curious to try it out. So both boards are pretty short. The Ultra 82 liters is 222 centimeters per 58, so a little wider, but still really short, which makes it really turny, especially in onshore conditions, you know, in smaller waves. And the Hyper is actually 220, if I'm not wrong, yeah, 220 per 55. So it's also super short. But what I want you to see, it's even though the measures are like similar, how different the shapes are, and how important that is in a board's function, and how the board works in different conditions. Again, this one is a little more narrow, a little fatter in the center, and thinner on the back to make it more radical for down the line conditions. This one on the Ultra, the liters are distributed more like evenly throughout the whole board. The nose is also pretty aggressive. The tail is a little wider to keep the speed in the bottom turn in onshore conditions, side onshore conditions. And the board itself, it's a little wider to give more speed and easy planing. So yeah, let's set them up. Yeah. Let's start with the setup of the Hyper 78 liters. This is the box that Starboard provides with all the foot straps, screws, and fins. All right, so first thing first, we have the screwdriver from Starboard, Starbox system. First thing, we'll put the valve, tight, but not too much. Second step, foot straps. We have 3 holes per side. Because of my foot that is really tight and narrow, I have to use the last one and the first one. So the last and the first hole, because it's the only way to make the strap tight enough for my foot. But here you can play with the different holes depending on your foot. Remember that you always want to have the strap tight on the side and a little higher on top. So that's how I'm gonna proceed now. Just remember to put the flap on your side and not on the other side, because if not, the water is gonna hit it and it's gonna come out while you're sailing. So here again, I'm gonna use the last and first hole just because my foot is so narrow. But overall, in between the front foot straps and the back foot strap, you wanna keep a distance of at least 46 centimeters. And that's just because it gives you the perfect range of leverage and control on the board. Obviously, the further they are, the more leverage we'll have on the board, which can help for turning, but at the same time, it could be a little uncomfortable. So I would say the minimum is 46 centimeters, and then you can go and feel it from there. Also depending on how you gotta position your foot straps for your foot, considering that the position of the foot strap, how tight it is on your foot, it's a priority because we don't want to get injured, and that's how a lot of people gets injured, right? So again, as you can see it here, we want the foot strap to be tight on the side and a little higher on top. This is too tight for me. I'm gonna make it a little less tight. So this, for example, is how I would keep my foot strap. Again, tight on the side, so every little movement of your foot goes straight into the board for turning, for any little reaction. And at the same time, you want it a little larger on top so that the foot doesn't remain stuck. And anytime I need to bring the foot out, I can just move it a little diagonal and pull it out. Easy to put in, easy to take out, but at the same time, super in control. Now let's put the fins on. Board is looking good. The Hyper comes on a quad setup, as we said. It's a Starboard system, so it's like US box and Starbucks. The fins that come in production are actually my favorite fins, the MFC K300 model, which are the ones that I've always been using. With the 78, you got the 13 and 9. Which sincerely I've never used. I've always used 14 just because these fins are so magic. The grip, it's so good, and the shape, it's so good that I never feel like they were too big. But I'm gonna try the 13 and not go for 14 if you want more grip, if you feel like maybe you get some spin out. I don't think so. I don't think it will be the case. But probably on an 82 and 88, you can go 14 and even 15 on the 88 and 94. As you can see, we have 3 fingers pretty much, 2 fingers and a half, 2 fingers and a half, 2 fingers and 3/4 in between the center and the front. You don't have much opportunity to move them more though, so this is what you will get just by pushing these fins all the way to the back, the central fins all the way to the back, and the frontal fins all the way to the front. This was the overall setup of the board, foot strap, and fins. The board is looking pretty damn good. One last thing I want to talk about real quick about the mast base, because the mast base, the mast foot, together with the fins are the 2 points of leverage, and depending on how close they are or how far they are, they make the board different. So the closer the fins and the mast base are, the more turny the board is, and the farther they are, the more you get drive and the board is more stable. So usually for bigger conditions, you want to get them a little farther away, and for smaller conditions, you can get them closer. So in general, I will keep the mast base like this, pretty much at the end, almost all covered, the whole all covered. But as you can see in the settings, you can move it all the way to the back for smaller conditions. This, how I'm gonna keep it, is for bigger conditions, which is what we might get in these days. But again, smaller waves, you just put them more back, so closer to the fins, so more turny. And bigger conditions, you just move it a little forward. Good?
Yeah.
All right, now I'm gonna set up the Ultra. So first thing again, the valve, gentle. So just put the foot straps on the Ultra 82 and I put them in the same way as in the Hyper. So tight on the side, a little higher on top, and last hole, first hole, as close as possible because my foot is narrow again. Distance is what it is, minimum 46 centimeters. All right, the board is set up. Put the thruster. I've been using these lateral fins for thruster. They give me a little more speed. I kept 2 fingers and a half distance in between the lateral and the central fin. I put the central fin all the way back and the frontal fins all the way forward. And yeah, now we're all set. And let's go see how they do in the water. All right, so I just had some really good sessions on both boards, the Hyper 78 and the Ultra 82, and I'm ready to give you a last analysis about the differences, the main differences and features of the two boards. First thing that I want to underline is how different the shape is, and especially how differently the leaders are distributed in the two boards. So the Hyper, it's way more dense in the middle, and so it permits you to float even in light wave riding conditions, but you really have to stay centered on the board. While if you go on the sides or a little more on the back, the tail is really thin, and so you will suffer a little with that. While the Ultra, the board, it's way wider and you feel a lot of stability. The board is also pretty fast because it has a little flatter rocker, and so I could really feel the difference on these two boards. The Ultra is a little easier in that, more stable, and a little faster for like early planing. Second thing that I'm going to talk about as main difference is the tail. So the tail of the two boards. On the Ultra, we have a way wider tail with way more leaders, and this permitted me, like for example, in side onshore conditions like in Matanzas last night, to keep the speed easily during the whole bottom turn, and so have more drive in those a little more onshore conditions. While on the Hyper, the tail being so small, so tight, and so thin, it makes it a little harder to keep the speed, but at the same time it makes the board super hyper radical. So for example, in Topocama, it's so easy with this board to go vertical on the lip, and just with a tiny bit of pressure on the back foot you can really achieve that. And this is pretty insane because it's not that easy, and it's really technical to go vertical on the wave, but this board makes it easier, way easier. So third and final main difference in between the two boards, as you can see, is the fin setup. The Ultra, being a thruster, I feel like is the perfect combo because the tail is wider, so it's a little harder to make a turn, but at the same time it helps you keep more speed in side onshore conditions. And so the thruster setup is perfect because it actually makes the board more agile and more turny. So I feel like there's a perfect compromise in between bigger tail that is a little tougher to turn, but the thruster setup that makes it more agile. On the other side, on the Hyper, we have this thin and really small tail, which makes the board kind of nervous because there's much leaders on the back, but the quad setup gives you this incredible grip that you need in those side offshore conditions, helping you and permitting you to go full power, full intensity in the bottom turn, and then full release in the top turn, keeping the board, the rail, the fins on the face of the wave and doing those carving turns which we all dream about. So overall, I'm really happy with both boards for Rio, and they really cover different conditions. And for me, it's pretty clear to understand where I'm going to use one board, where I'm going to use the other one. For me, the Hyper is going to be the board of choice in places like Topocama here in Chile with its side offshore, full down the line. Like probably in places like Hoquipa when it's side offshore, big waves, and I need a lot of grip control. While for example, the Ultra, I'm thinking about side onshore conditions for jumping and riding. Places like Fuerteventura, for example, in Punta Blanca, or Pozo if I'm going, probably smaller leaders, Hoquipa on the side onshore days. So the differences are pretty clear. They work great in their own area, so I'm stoked about that. I'm stoked about the quiver. I'm still waiting for an 83 liters Hyper, and yeah, once again, I'm happy to have these boards, these two models. I hope the differences were clear. I hope you can understand also from the clips, action clips, how the board work, how they change also my style of riding, and in what type of conditions they work at their best. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and please let me know your thoughts in the comments or any question, doubts, and happy to reply and to help you out. See you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.